Good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today for this exclusive webinar from various parts of this country. Today we'll be talking about a very key topic, succession planning. Planning a succession in the companies and especially for the key roles are a tough nut to crack. The debate around succession planning goes around for hundreds of years, but today with the help of technology, we can make things a bit easier. Did you know, according to a 2020 HBR report, 53% of the organizations don't have a succession plan for their CEOs, which is a big red flag for companies and especially for the people leaders. But as I mentioned, succession planning become much easier. It can become much easier and hassle-free with tools like AI, data analytics, and HR tech tools. Firms can stay two steps ahead of succession requirements, especially in identifying the skills that the successor should possess, the right candidate, the learning or upskilling requirements, and many more. And to walk us through how tech will help in planning for successors and prepare for tomorrow, we have a very special guest. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice President and Country Leader, Sum Total Systems. Welcome, Rajiv.
Thank you, Abid.
Thanks a lot for coming. Happy to host you again.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
So before I request you to take over, allow me to share a few words about you with our viewers. Rajiv is responsible for leading the sales and consulting lines of business across the region, including sales, channels, and strategic customer programs. With more than 2 decades of experience in building business grounds and leading multiple organizations, he has worked with Oracle, CFI, SSA Global, and others. Apart from leading sales and customers, Rajiv manages to run 12 kilometers every single day and inspires others to stay fit. He has completed a couple of half marathons and planning to run more. So all the best, Rajiv, for your upcoming marathons and this webinar. The frame is all yours.
Thank you, Abid. So guys, Abid did rightly talk about succession planning, and this is a subject which is very dear to me. See, a lot of organizations today are talking about succession planning, but there is a huge difference between what they're talking and what they're actually doing. Some of the point that I would possibly like to talk about in the beginning of the session is when you look at succession planning in today's world, right? I think it's very important to look at every single employee in an organization because you are expecting employees today, especially post-pandemic or during pandemic, depending on how one is looking at it. We are expecting all the employees to be agile, adaptable, resilient. And when you're looking at building an agile workforce, you need to be sure that every single employee in your organization is also being seen as somebody whom you are focusing on very keenly, allowing him to succeed, allowing him to grow within the organization. But based on my experience of working with our customers, which are 70% of Fortune 500 companies globally, I have noticed that only 1/3 or at best 2/3 of the employee pool are actually seen as successors. So when you actually look at succession planning, they are only considering 2/3 of the employees to be successors in some role or the other. And 1/3 are left out because they believe that 1/3 will anyway move away from the organization either because of voluntary or involuntary attrition. So that is one thing that we are trying to address with our customers of how they should be looking at a much bigger successor pool than only 2/3 of their employee base. Because only if they're able to look at the entire employee base and also more importantly communicate to them that they are being seen as potential successors for different roles, you will be able to build a team, you will be able to build a workforce which is truly agile, which is truly with you, which is truly there to harness every single opportunity that knocks on your doorstep. So let me quickly take you through some slides which kind of establishes what is happening in today's world, what has changed after pandemic hit us, how are organizations possibly thinking about changing their strategy when it looks at succession planning? Are they really looking at a technology to implement succession planning? Or is it still a human driven, a gut feel driven decision? On if they are implementing succession planning, where are we in terms of adoption? Because I think there is again a huge difference between what you implement and what is being embraced. Today, to start with, when pandemic hit us, yes, there was a lot of focus on business continuity. But one more focus came in was about learning management, right? A lot of people started looking at learning management to build skills and competencies of various people. But prime objective was one, yes, obviously, because you have a remote workforce and you have to spend time in building their skills and competencies. But some of the organizations also started looking at building those skills and competencies because they wanted to make sure that the employees don't lose their job. Because now the pandemic not only impacted the health of the employees, but it also impacted the health of the business. And the pace, the speed at which the impact happened, nobody had ever imagined it. There were what if analysis, there were a lot of models that people had, but nobody had a model to deal with pandemic at this scale and the impact that it had on economy at this scale. So today what we want to talk about is broadly look at saying that if business growth has to happen in post-pandemic world, because the pandemic is going to be there. So let's talk about 4 to 5 years from now, because let's look at peep into the future, right? If we are talking about business growth in the future, what should be your succession strategies? And what are the frameworks that one should have if you want these strategies to be successful? What is the need? There is a need for succession planning. The first important need is address the identification and growth of talent pool in this acute disruption. And I've spoken about the scale and pace, right? And that scale is still impacting us. Now, if you have that scenario where there will be very few opportunities that will come our way, it is very, very critical that we address and identify who is the right person to be able to succeed, to make me succeed in today's world. In this time of uncertainty, which is that pool which will make me succeed? Yes, it's a different question, like I said, whether we are looking at only 2/3 of the employee base, half of the employee base, or the complete employee base to be able to help us deal with this disruption. But it's important that there has to be a science, there has to be methodology, there has to be a process to be able to identify the right talent pool. The second thing was that what talent strategies people adopted or people thought about before pandemic or during pandemic. Are those strategies going to be the same in the future? So I think it's very important that every HR leader, every business leader, and it's not an HR space alone, it is business as well. Every HR leader, every business leader is able to relook at the succession strategies. Third is build leaders who are future ready. And I think this is the point that I want to drive is it's not about today, because there are a lot of organizations, a lot of our customers who start adopting, say, an engineering college or an aviation college or a medical college or whoever, whichever, right? Where they want to catch people young and then start focusing on them, because now because your focus is different. You're building leaders for tomorrow. And what you are right now focusing on is culture, business fit, vision fit, tech savviness, and agility. I've been talking to various CHRs across the country. And one thing that I have noticed, there was no discussion about agility when we were evaluating candidates from outside. No HR was actually asking a question saying that, are you an agile person? Nobody was talking about, yes, there were questions around saying that, okay, what were the challenges that you faced in the past? How did you overcome those challenges? Because that was somewhere reflecting on the behavior of the person. But today, there is a lot of focus on agility. There is a lot of focus on the culture fit of that person and culture fit to the business fit. There's a lot of focus. In fact, one role that has really come up lately is a person called Chief Transformation Officer. Because now organizations wants to transform themselves. They want to look at future. They want to possibly think what are the different ways we can either change our go-to-market, change our business models, change our outlook to our customers, change our outlook to our internal employees. So there's a lot of changes that are happening, and there's this designation that has got created now, which is transformation officer, and this person is now looking at everything inside out or outside in to see that there is a culture fit and there's a business fit to what the end customer is asking for. And therefore, succession planning becomes very important to build those people in conjunction with the chief talent officer or chief transformation officer, sorry, who can then possibly drive the organization for the future. Let's look at what succession planning is broadly doing. One is know and nurture your talent pipeline. It ensures critical leadership continuity. So, like Abid was saying, not many organizations still are looking at building a successor pool for even their C-level jobs. When you look at hiring a person internally, how many times does an organization look at a job description? That this is my job description for a CEO. But when I go out and scout for a person from outside, I always look at job description. Are those job descriptions getting into even hiring people from inside? And that is where the second point comes, which is evaluate overall talent readiness and identify at-risk positions. Because when you identify at-risk positions, it is equally important to say that, okay, if these positions are at risk, what are the skills and competencies that I am expecting from this position? And it is not about, when I talk about a position, it's about a role. Say a CEO role or a CFO role or a head of marketing role or head of sales role. It's important to identify which are the positions which are at risk and therefore look at your talent pool internally and externally. I would always recommend looking at internally and not always looking at outside, because there are a lot of people who are committed to your organization. So you should also look at the talent pool sitting inside. Make it easy for managers to identify top talent. When I talk about culture of an organization, right? When I talk about agility in an organization, when I talk about the responsiveness from an organization, it is not only managers, it is not only CEOs of an organization. Yes, CEOs are at the forefront now, trying to say that this is, if I can do this, they lead by example. But today, every manager, there has to be leadership at every level. And when you have to establish leadership at every level, I think managers have to play a very critical role in identifying top talent. And succession planning does help in making managers more equipped to identify the right talent. Build the bench strength of your organization. Maybe the time is not right, but that doesn't mean that times will not become better as we move along. And that was one point that I was talking in the beginning, that a lot of organizations started investing in learning management systems to build skills and competencies of people, to upskill people, to reskill people, because the focus was building bench strength. So that when the opportunities come your way, when things become better, you have a good bench strength. The second major focus of succession planning was cultivate tomorrow's leader, which is recognize talent gaps and prepare employees. It's very important to identify who are my top talent. But when you identify a top talent, you should also be looking at what is the gap that they have. And like I said, the job description in very simple terms highlights what are the skills and competencies that I'm expecting in that role. Just map it to the gaps that the person today has if he has to move to that role, and start preparing employees to bridge that gap. Improve internal career mobility. Everybody should be knowing that what are the things that one needs to do, including building skills and competencies to move to the next level. So a succession planning system, a formal approach to succession planning, helps improve internal career mobility. Create dynamic talent pools. I may be looked at as, for example, if I am being looked at as a successor for a particular position, that does not mean that the organization should not look at other individuals as well. There has to be always, this is a dynamic process, and this is not a one-time process. You keep making, it's important to make this dynamic. And when you're talking about dynamic, it's important to keep communicating to your employees or where they stand today. Because trust me, most of the people leave a particular organization. While a lot of people say that the people leave because because of the organization, but because of their managers. But the most important reason that has come out based on our interaction with our customers is that employees leave if they do not know what is their growth path in the organization. So when you are building dynamic talent pools, it is also important that you communicate that to your employees so that they feel that, and they know what is that they have to do. And if they do this, how do they move up the value chain? And finally, leverage drag and drop 9-box. Now, for example, there's a 9-box matrix. Today, for example, we have something called 9N-box. So irrespective of how many parameters you want to evaluate, please evaluate your employees to identify where do they sit. What are the gaps that they have? Are they high potential candidates? Even if they are high potential candidates, they might be at a high attrition risk. Because maybe they're, and this is where a lot of systems talk to each other. The organizations today are looking at succession planning, and this is the reality. A lot of organizations, if I say 90% plus organizations are looking at succession planning in isolation. But it's important to note that people leave when it's a high attrition risk. Why will people leave? Which means there's some information that has to come from performance management. Because then only you will know whether the person how has the person failed against the KPI that the person got. There has to be data that has to come from your compensation system, because that could be the key driver for person leaving. So you can't look at succession planning in isolation. You have to get various systems to talk to each other. Let me now bring up the first poll question. I think this is where I would like you to start thinking of how succession planning today is being seen differently. So what is the most important factor of succession planning? Is it communication? Is it about balancing transparency with confidentiality? Or it is saying that use people analytics to inform decision making? Please respond. What do you think is the most important factor when it comes to succession planning? Is it communication? Is it bringing transparency but with confidentiality? Or look at people analytics? What is most important? Communication, transparency, or analytics? Okay, and I am expecting results to come soon. And I'm not surprised that people are saying analytics is important in decision making, followed by bringing transparency with confidentiality, and finally timely communication. Now, when we go about implementing a succession planning system, right, there are different ways of implementing it. I think, like I was saying, that a lot of organizations start looking at succession planning, but not many of them actually truly implement it. Now, truly implementing is not about saying that I have implemented a succession planning and there's data in the succession planning system. When I say truly implementing, it is all about all of these things, which is about saying analytics, which is about saying, so analytics will possibly give you that data of saying that who should be my successor to a particular position. But I think the other two factors become very, very important. It is about communication. And also, I think I love the third point, which was about saying that balance confidentiality with everything. And that is the genesis of what organizations are today looking at. When they look at succession planning, what is the information that anybody is looking at? The information that you decide when you find a successor is not only name of the employee or email ID of the employee. You're also looking at the educational qualifications. You're also looking at willingness to travel. You're also looking at the certification that person has. You're also looking at the entire job history of that person, whether in your current organization and past organization, and also cover achievements. So it's basically the resume that gets captured. And when you look at capturing the resume, yes, there is a lot of confidential data. And I think it is the responsibility of managers to effectively communicate to the employees, to their successor pool, of where do they stand. But yes, be very careful of what information you share with the larger audience. So I think all the three factors are very, very important. Tech-driven analytics supported by human intervention, which is the way you have your gut feel, and then communicate effectively by keeping confidential data in place. So what is the process that happens when you look at succession planning? So a lot of time, the step 4 takes precedence over step 1, where people go out and say, okay, I want a succession planning tool. But I think the right approach, according to us, is uncovering key business positions. Identify why you need a system. You need a system does not mean that you just buy it, just implement it. There has to be business reason of why you should look at a system. So I think it's very important to identify what are the business positions that you want to uncover. Second is map key competencies to build success profiles. Because this is not where your succession planning comes, because you have other systems in your organization which will help you build key competencies. Then you find out what are the key competencies required for a particular job role to be succeed. Then you shortlist the potential successor and choose the right succession planning tools, where you bring all of them together. And then you start assessing the potential successors based on the competencies, based on the skill sets that they have, based on the gaps that they already have, based on how, if somebody moves, what is the impact that will have on a particular position and therefore on the future of an organization. When you look at all of these factors, then you decide what is the way forward, and then you act on the decision. So there is always a step, there's a scientific way of looking at succession planning. It's not that you start with the technology, it's important that you first establish the need for it. Because the need identification is the key part to having the desired results from succession planning. That brings me to the second poll question. And this is where I am going to get your views on what you think is the role of technology in succession planning. With technology being so advanced and multiple tools available, should we fully rely on tech for succession planning? Based on the previous response where you said analytics is important, the three options that you have is yes, tech is the best option. Second is we can't lose the human touch. And third is succession planning is both art and science. Which means either you look at tech only, or look at both, or look at human touch. I think it's very important when you look at succession planning, because by investing in technology does not mean you'll be successful. By looking at human touch alone, you may not be right. And looking at both of them may be the right option, may not be the right option. So I'll wait for your views on this. Wonderful. Yes, this is what I was expecting, that all of you will say that, yes, we have to possibly have technology, but also have a human touch with it. I'll give you an example of a really large IT services company, which is around 500,000 employees globally. Before I kind of look at what are the tech required for succession planning. And I was talking to the CHRO, the India head of HR for this company, which has 500,000 employees. And they said, when we had a process of hiring freshers, and we said, okay, one is the human touch, where we call people for interviews, we get them understand their profile. This is before the onboarding process, and we identify and we give them offer letters. The second step where they said that, okay, because we have to hire like 30, 40, 50,000 people in 1 year, we said we made it everything automatic. They come, they give their video interviews, we shortlist them, we get them to do some assessments. If they fare well, we give them offer letter, then they join. Now, when they looked at this data, and obviously data has to drive something, but after 3 months, they realized that there are two things that got impacted. One was attrition. Attrition in this case was people who accepted the offer but did not join. And second was people who did not believe when they join. I think, and now that we are possibly thinking about the subject, I think two things which have come into the forefront is agility and culture, right? And that is something which they felt it was missing. That we did not find a culture fit between people that we wanted, truly wanted, and people who joined. So they reversed the entire process and said, okay, human angle is the best. Well, we will do their onboarding process electronically. So there is no right answer for this problem. It depends upon organization to organization. And I think that is where the first point comes, which is about evaluating your succession strategies. What is that you're trying to build? What does the organization represent? What kind of successors you want? What kind of culture that you are building in the organization? Is it only a CEO who's driving a culture, or it is every single person in the organization is believing in something? So yes, tech is important, but human touch plays a very, very critical role. But human touch alone may not solve the problem when you have to build a workforce for tomorrow, the right successor for a particular role in the future, because we are talking about 5 years from now, and therefore technology plays a very, very critical role. Now let's talk about tech-driven succession planning. What does technology do when we look at succession planning? And I'll possibly touch on each other point mentioned on the right-hand side. First is capture and search for employee competencies, skills, certification, and experience. This is where when you start a particular process, you should have clarity. At least you should have data that gets into the system, because it's like garbage in, garbage out, right? So put the right stuff inside, which talks about what are the employee competencies, what are the skills, what are certification, what are the experiences that every individual in the organization has. Because only then you will know where do we stand. Only then you will be able to define where do we want to go and how do we go, even if we know where do we want to go. So it's very important to first set the ground right. Second is drag and drop Nbox grid to rate employees' performance versus potential versus compensation. That is what I was talking about. It is not only performance. It is not only potential. It is also compensation. And some of these things come from a learning management system, a performance management system, a compensation management system. The data talks to each other from various systems. Only then you can possibly establish and rate the employees in the right scale. Third point is dynamic talent pools to group employees by user-defined criteria. Now I am looking at a possible successor for a CEO position. I think the system should be able to create dynamic pools and group employees, saying that these are the set of employees who fit into my criteria. So I established skills and competencies, for example. I established willingness to travel as one of the criteria. I established saying that he has to be a management graduate from a premier college. He has to have 25 years of experience. He has to have experience in managing P&L. These are all internal factors or maybe an external factors. But the system then should be able to dynamically create those pools of those employees, because then you look at that pool and work with that pool. And that is where it comes in. It's not about a system might be able to identify, the system will identify. The system will throw recommendations. The system will identify the set of successors. But then you start working on the talent pool based on what the system throws. Next point is talent assessments. Track employee retention risk and other key attributes. Assess your talent. There are many factors. While you may be thinking that he is the right candidate for a particular role, he may not be thinking long term with you, because he might not be thinking of a particular position as his logical career growth. Or he might think that he's not being compensated well. I think it's very important for system to look at some of these attributes. And yes, today's system do look at these attributes. Talent search and talent explorer. Prescribe learning, cascade goals, development objectives. Once you've identified a talent pool, once you know who are the people that you have to work with for a particular role, then you prescribe them, build them for the future. Prescribe learning, cascade goals, because the goals will change. As a manager, you should be able to dynamically change goals. And that goals obviously goes into the performance system. It doesn't happen in succession planning, right? And that's why two systems also have to talk to each other and build their development objectives. And I'll talk about these development objectives. I'll park it for the moment, but I'll talk about in the future that how important is these development objectives. One, in retaining people. Second, ensuring that they feel wanted. And third is towards the overall growth of the organization. The last 2 points are about impact analysis. And this is what one of the images on the slide says, that if I am being seen as a successor for the CEO position, system also needs to look at that. What happens if I move to a CEO position? What happens to my position? Is there enough bench strength to replace me? And is there enough bench strength to replace somebody who replaces me? Because a lot of times, if there is no bench, and that is where decision making comes as a process to succession planning, that if the system says that there's no enough bench strength for my position, if I move to a CEO position, the system should strongly recommend that I should not be possibly moved to the next level, unless there is enough bench strength that gets created. And that is where an actionable insight comes from a system. System will throw data, but then as managers, as leaders, you start looking at data differently. Slice and dice data to identify who is the person. And then you start looking at whether I need to change the time frame, whether I need to look at a successor from outside. And then obviously you also look at whether if I don't move to the next level, will I leave the organization? So there are a lot of to's and fro's that happen. There's a lot of data, and you actually have the entire grid to play around with it to see how do I move one person from one position to another, and what would have the impact on the overall business and overall organization structure as well. This is where technology comes very, very handy, to be able to give you that information where you can make a very, very, very informed decision. But when you look at everything, and this is where I was talking about development objectives in the previous slide, make the learning experience personal and engaging. Even if you come and tell me that I am being seen as a successor, and this is what you have to learn to become to move to the next level, is it personal and engaging for me? Does it make me strive for it? Or do I still go back to the old school of thoughts and say, okay, if I'm in the organization for the last 10, 15, 20 years, I will automatically get upgraded. And that is the word I would want to use, upgraded to the next level, which is become a CEO of the company. There's no science behind it. It's just that because I'm possibly in the organization for 15, 20 years, and that is where a lot of organizations, especially in India, are struggling. Because they have, logically, they move people from one level to another, depending on the years of experience that person has in that particular organization. Yes, there are organizations which are pretty innovative, pretty advanced, pretty creative, and they're saying that, okay, I need the right person for the right role. If I don't have it internally, I will go out and scout for it. But when I have to have internal people who want to focus on building themselves. Make sure that you have learning for them. And this is nothing to do with learning management system. Don't take me otherwise. This is nothing to do with the learning management system. Yes, learning management system will play a role in making me move to the next level. But it is important that I make learning more personal and more engaging. Skill competency gap analysis. This is how you build leaders for tomorrow. Identify the gap. Identify the gap in skills, and a set of skills will form a competency. Because every particular role expects a person to have certain competency and certain skills. So what do you do when you look at a gap analysis? The skills to training with proficiency skills. Every job role, and this is every job role should have identified, defined, clearly defined skills and competencies. And then you look at those details and see how your employees fit into that job based on the skills and competencies. And that skills and competencies is not a one-time exercise. It has to be something which is a continuous update or upgrade based on what is the business dynamics, based on what is market expecting. For an automobile industry, for example, a person at the shop floor at one point of time, great guy, was only assembling different parts. But today, the same person is expected to understand chips, because that is what the end customer is expecting, a chips in an automobile. So change the skills and competencies and understand and evaluate how does an employee fit into that job. And if there is fitment issue, then look at reskilling, upskilling that person. If you feel that that person does not have an attrition risk and is there with you, is committed to your organization, then you focus on reskilling and upskilling that person. Get actionable recommendations. Define parameters for career path match. Where I feel, for example, somebody might come back and tell me that my next logical position is, say, a CEO of an organization. But I don't want to be a CEO. I want to be a CFO of an organization. So it's important to have career path match. It's important to say that, okay, if you may want to become, that is your individual plan, you want to become a CFO, that these are things that you should be looking at if you want to move into that position. But but at the same time, the system should be able to throw that data, say that your logical career path is a CEO. And that is the power of looking at skills and competencies gap and looking at a succession planning system to be able to establish and throw recommendations in terms of career path. Automate activate assignments, and also look at putting coaches and mentors who can not only track but help you grow within the system. Career path and ITP development plan. I'll give you a basic example of Netflix, right? Today, what does Netflix do? I watch a movie for 5 minutes and suddenly there is a lot of recommendations that come from Netflix saying that because you have watched this, we thought you would like these 10 movies as well. But does that allow me to bring in my own recommendations? This is what my organization wants me to do, but this is also what I want to do. I may be my organization wants me to create a bench strength for Java developers, but I believe that 5 years from now, a .NET developer will have more value. I also want to invest in learning .NET. That is individual development plan. So it's very important to have individual development plans aligned with the career path, because that is where the individual's aspirations and organization aspirations match. Otherwise, there's always disjointed, disconnected approach to business, to even succession planning approach. There has to be a connected, synergized approach when you're building successor pool or building the right leaders for tomorrow. So what does career path and individual development plan does? They deploy career growth opportunities, allows people to attract and retain talent. It allows you to have alignment to roles. And most importantly, when we have identified certain development objectives for a person to move to the next career path or next role, it is important to be able to group activities, look at his skills and competencies, and then align it with the development objective. So that tomorrow there is a scientific way of evaluating KPIs as against development plan. Both cannot be seen in isolation. It is about, for example, if I have to really say, I hire a person, I say these are skills and competencies that are required from that person. The person has those skills and competencies, I hire him. When he comes on board, there's a new project that comes to me. I say, okay, these are skills and competencies, that gap that you have, build those skills and competencies. The person invests in building those skills and competencies. What happens next? He'll say, okay, toward mid-year review or end-year review, he comes and says, okay, last 3 months, you have not delivered anything. And he'll say, okay, but last 3 months, I was focusing on getting trained. But that is not captured in his performance management system. Even if it is captured in performance management system, the person today, the new generation that comes today from IITs and IIMs are expecting, saying that if I am able to do what you're asking me to do, then my compensation should change. That is their expectation. So various systems have to talk to each other. So when we look at individual development plans, we look at the H part of HR, which is the human part of HR, and bring the employees at the core of everything, and then look at either performance or succession or learn. Because when you start focusing on an individual, you start focusing on his growth in the organization, on his career path, on his individual development plan, on his succession plan. And then look at technology to give you that insights on how he's faring against each of the objectives that you have set for him. How does he fit into the career path? When you look at technology for succession planning, and this is very different from looking for a learning management or a performance management or a compensation or workforce management, right? It's very different when you look at technology. And what are the best practices when you look out for a technology for succession planning? One is user experience, right? Now, user experience is about whether I love to use a product or not. You can't force me today to use a product. I think this is something which is paramount. Everybody today is looking at user experience. So you should have a beautiful and modern software which your employees want to use. Because the adoption increases significantly if you have a great user experience. Because gone are those days when you are expecting people to start adopting technology, whether you like it or not. I think it is the other way around, where because of AI and ML and other dynamics that a technology is able to throw at you, you're expecting technology to start adopting you, not the other way. So I think user experience becomes important. Own data centers, and this is where I will possibly talk about data centers and the deployment models, right? Is what are the things that become important? Like I was saying, when you look at a succession pool, when you are looking at identifying a successor for a particular position, it is not only the name of the individual and email ID of the individual that you save in the system. You save every possible information, which is name, designation, his experience, his certifications, his willingness to travel, his family background, everything. And this becomes a very, very, very important and sensitive information. So when you look at a deployment model, and obviously you have to look at application uptime and scalability, but it's also important, the security is critical and very, very paramount. It is not that you are in banking industry and security is important, irrespective of which industry you are in, irrespective of whether you are exposed to cloud or not, because cloud has a lot of positives. On-premise has, in today's term, where a lot of people think whether it should be on-premise or whether it should be cloud. I think each of those two deployment models has their positives and negatives. But when you consider any of those options, you should look at some of these things, which is application uptime, scalability, and security. And always remember that what you are throwing there, what you are saving there is very, very, very sensitive information, which you cannot afford to let go. There have been news in the media in last 1 week that whether it's RBI, whether it's government, whether it's any other statutory body, they're forcing employees' data, which is companies, to keep the employee data within the country. The next step to this is how do you ensure that the data which is sitting in the country is safe, secure, and available all the time to you. The next 3 points, which is India presence, professional service, and commitment for innovation. All 3 becomes important because my initial thought of saying that the what if analysis that existed earlier does not work anymore and will not certainly work in the future, because we don't even know what that uncertainty will be. Today, we possibly know how to deal with a COVID scenario and deal with what happens if COVID comes and there's risk on health and business. But we don't know what the uncertainty will be in the future. We're just trying to build an agile, adaptable, and resilient workforce. But what about our systems? What are our partners who are dealing and building those systems for us? Look at partnering with those organizations who are committed to innovation, for building best practices for the future, who do not, just because you are an on-premise system, does not mean that you upgrade once in 5 years. What is your philosophy of innovation? Does your partner have the same philosophy of innovation? Does your partner have the right know-how about your business? Does your partner know how to connect business and technology? Does your partner have the team based locally in India to support that growth, support that change, support that dynamism? I think these are some of the things which are very, very important when you are looking at adopting a technology to support your succession planning. My last slide before we go, sum total. What is sum total today? Sum total has been in the industry for 40 years now, only focused on HR. We have, like I mentioned in my session, we have close to 70% of Fortune 500 companies using our software. We don't work on providing our customers with off-the-shelf software. Yes, a lot of companies use our off-the-shelf software, but we become their consulting partners. We design the solution with them. We work with them to ensure that whether it is recruiting, whether it's onboarding, whether it's learning, whether it's performance, whether it's succession, whether it's career path and development, whether it's workforce management, we understand their business. We work cohesively with them to deliver a solution which can help them build a technically robust, business-driven, and commercially viable solution. Thank you so much for listening to me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll pass it on to Abid now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rajiv, for enlightening us with all your views. I think not only me, but all the viewers must have learned a lot. But I think you need to spend some more time because we have a lot of questions and we'll try to take as many as possible. So without further ado, we'll start with Anita Pinto. Anita Pinto is asking, make it easy for managers to identify top talent. What needs to be done?
Okay, so when you look at managers to hire the top talent, I think it's important to first have the right data to be able to scientifically place who your team members are. If you are scientifically able to establish what are the skills and competencies that they have, where do they fit in the 9-box matrix or N-box matrix, then you can start looking at saying that, okay, how do I move them? Is it top performer, top talent? Is he a top talent with high attrition? Put the right perspective. And the right perspective comes only if you have data to establish who are the people that you have in your organization and where do they fit in the 9-box matrix or N-box matrix, and how do they move up what is the career path that they have. But everything has to start with putting down or scientifically placing your employees on a matrix.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajiv. Hope you are satisfied, Anita, with his answer. So next question is from Mohita Tiwari. The question is, once identified as a successor and IDP created, what are some of the sure short methods to track IDP progress?
It's simple. If you have a individual development plan identified for every employee or the identified employee, then you look at what are the skills and competencies that the person has, what are the gaps. It moves into your individual development plan and you assign certain courses against it or assign certain programs against it so that they build in skills and competency, and then put a system in place so that you have a 360-degree feedback, a continuous feedback process, and those days have gone when you have half yearly, quarterly performance cycles. You can have very ad hoc performance cycles and allow the system to capture any input feedback that you give to employee anytime, and that will ensure that the IDP is actually being put into practice in real time.
Okay, real time. Thank you so much. So the next question is from Trideep Chaudhary, and I think it's an interesting one. He's asking, the bench strength has some expectations and ambitions. How to keep this bench strength motivated?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Let me put that way. Say I was giving an example of an automobile, right? Now, just imagine there is a person working on the shop floor, and this person says, "Okay, I was the best in the market to assemble parts, and now I understand chips." Now, if he doesn't understand chips, what is the size behind a chip, and what is the role that chip plays on an automobile, and what is the role that I can play to make it happen? I'm there in that organization, and because I'm there in the organization, I'm blue-collar employee. I'm also expecting growth. Imagine the plight of a CHRO who's not getting anything in return, but still has to give a salary increase. Right? So that is the situation that we exist today. I think when you have to look at making sure that people are motivated, the only way you can do that is by communicating it effectively. When you have identified a successor pool, when you have identified that I am focusing on building a bench strength, communicate to your employees so that they don't feel scared. If they are away from projects and they are only getting invested in building a strength, right, the bench strength, communicate it to them that I am preparing you for the future. Because if you don't communicate to them, and if they have nothing to do, they will start looking out for jobs. So communication is very, very critical.
So another question is from Digent Mazumdar. Choose the succession planning tools. What would they be? Please, can you share some examples?
So, what are the succession planning tools available in the market today? Is that the question?
Yeah. So he's asking if you can share some of the examples of succession planning tools.
So, for example, SumTotal offers succession planning tool. There is my friendly competition, SAP and Oracle. They offer succession planning tools. But yes, there are right now, if you really ask me, there are really large organizations who offer succession planning. They are not seen too much of mushrooming happening from startups in India, because there's a lot of startups who are offering learning management systems today. But I haven't seen that they are invested heavily on building a true world-class succession planning system. Because succession planning cannot be a rudimentary anything that you can build. It has to be a very, very scientifically evolved system.
Okay, great. So another question from Kevin D'Souza. I think this is a very basic but equally important question, where Kevin is asking, how do we define and assess potential? How do you do, Rajiv?
I think it's like we said, basic question, very important when you look at identifying a potential. It is important to identify the job role. Once you identified a job role, the potential depends on, for example, fluency of a language, his willingness to travel. For example, if you really want to hire a national sales manager, right? At least he should know English and Hindi, and if not, the vernacular languages. If he says, I would not want to travel, then he's not the right potential, right? If, for example, if you are expecting him, yes, there are changes. For example, I moved from marketing to sales, right? Yes, there are very few that happen like that, right? From a hardcore marketing to hardcore sales. But yes, today when you look at a potential of a person, you actually look at saying that what is the kind of experience he's had in the past. For example, if you have to hire for a CFO and you look at a potential of a person, you have to look at people who have worked with numbers in the past. If you have not exposed to numbers, how can you end up becoming a CFO of an organization? The person could be sitting anywhere, and if he has the potential to work with numbers effectively and have a long-term vision, some of these things. So culture, agility, competence, willingness to travel, all these are key attributes in defining the potential.
So we have another critical question. I think this will be our last question because we are running, it's almost time. So Merlin Michael D'Souza is asking, do organizations have full-fledged succession planning departments? Is it necessary because surplus people can be removed by offering benefits and shortage can always be replaced easily?
Okay. Today, organizations do not have, I'm talking from the India perspective. I'm not, there's a globally things are different, but from my India, if I have to talk about India story, there's nothing called succession planning system. Yes, some of the really large evolved organizations still have something called a chief learning officer and chief talent officer. There's a talent management, which is a separate team. And that team is responsible for performance, succession, compensation. So there is and it's very small skewed team. So maybe if I have to really look at a large bank or large automobile industry, which is like a leader in their own space, they would have possibly one head of talent and possibly two people working with him, possibly looking at many bigger things. There is what I was saying, that you should look at partnering with those organizations who understand your business, because they work with you in tandem to build those success profiles for you. It is not a one-time job. So you do not, so point is you do not expose your sensitive data to them, but in a very hybrid model, in that way, work with your external partner to help build the succession planning system for you, to help throw analytics. Today, for example, I would want to have all my analytics on my dashboard. Why should I invest time in building my own reports? And that is where your third party or third partners come into play. Even if you have a small team, you have a large pool of your partners who can help you succeed in building a succession planning system.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rajiv. It's time. I understand we haven't answered all the questions, but I'm sure I request all of you to please connect with Rajiv over LinkedIn and ask him these questions, and he'll be happy to respond to all of you.
Certainly.
So on that note, I think it's a wrap. And thank you so much. Thank you once again for sharing your thoughts for succession planning and how tech can help us to prepare a better future. Thank you so much, Rajiv.
Thank you, Abid. Thank you, everyone. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Thank you.